Masechet Sukkah, Daf Yud Zayin 17. We begin with the Mishnah at the top. Harichuk hirchik et hasikuch min hadefanot shelosha tefachim pesula. Someone may have space between the edge of the sukkah and where the good proper sechach is, and it's more than 3 tefachim, then it's no good. This is we're talking about empty space, not sechach pasul. So empty space, see the picture here. Like this, okay? Empty space between the top of the wall and the sechach. If it's less than 3 tefachim, then we apply lavud. Any more than 3 tefachim is no good. So this is the worst thing to have in your roof is empty space. It's worse than having sechach pasul. We'll try to figure out why. So now we're going to have several cases of sechach pasul. Bayit shenifchat v'sikech al gabav. So you have a house and the middle of the roof fell in. If it happens to be around the time of Sukkot, you say, oh, fantastic. Now I can use this as Sukkah. So here you have the problem that around the edge, there is sechach. Even if this is kosher sechach, let's say it's made out of wooden beams that are kosher, still would not be good because it's ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. But let's say you just want to leave them there. And so you, the middle falls in and you put kosher sechach in the middle. So if there is from the edge of the kosher sechach to the edge of the wall less than 4 amot, then that is fine. We'll see why. Seems the basic reason is because of dofen akuma. We can imagine as if the wall bends over. So this is all part of the wall, which still would mean you can't sit under it, but it's okay. The sechach is still adjacent to the wall, so that is kasher. That's case number 1 of sechach pasul. Vechen chaser shehi mukefet achsadra. And so too, a sukkah that's in a courtyard. So that would be a very similar case, really. Looks like this. So you have a courtyard and there's a portico, a covered porch in front of people's doorways. So this around here, even if it's made out of kosher sechach material, the problem is it's there all year round, so that would be ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. So this is not good. You can't sit under there, but as long as it's less than 4 amot from the edge of the wall to the edge of that portico cover, and then you put sechach in the middle, that's fine. You can sit under the new sechach that you put there. Okay, this case seems to be pretty much the same as the previous case. The Gemara will discuss why we talk about both of these, and yet a third one. Sukkah gedola shekifuha bidvar she'en mesakechin bo im yesh tachtav 4 amot pesula. If you build a large sukkah, so now you're building it from scratch. Since you're building it from scratch, there's no problem of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. But you put material that is not good, like let's say metal sheets, around on the outside. And all the kosher schach only in the middle. So again here, if there is 4 amot or more between the wall and the kosher schach, it's not good, but less than that, it's fine. So you see all these 3 cases seem to all be borrowing from that the tool of dofen akuma, a crooked wall. So that is the Mishnah. We have 1 case of non-kosher, of empty space, that's 3 tefachim. And then we have 3 cases of improper sechach, but there's something there, and that's 4 amot as long as it's adjacent to one of the walls. Okay, so now the Mishnah, the Gemara starts off and wonders about the repetition. Why do you need 3 different cases to teach us that 4 amot adjacent to a wall is permitted because of dofen akuma? Kol haneh lamali siricha diyash me'ainan bayit shenivchat mishum dehane mechisot lebayit abidan. If you told me only the first case where it's a house, so then I would say maybe that's in the middle of the house, right? So then I would say, I could apply dofen akuma here. You know why? Because these walls were built for the interior of the house. So therefore, it makes sense to say the wall can continue up to the ceiling, and it's just a bent wall. And so I can apply dofen akuma in this case. But maybe I would say not in this case, because here these walls are made to be walls for the interior, right? And but they're not walls for the portico cover. So maybe I would say I cannot apply dofen akuma. These walls, nobody would think that they connect to the roof over here. The roof is a separate structure. It happens to be next to it. And so the chidush is, even so, even though these are made as interior walls, nevertheless, I can use dofen akuma and apply this wall as if it turns outwards towards the middle of the sukkah. Good. So I have those two cases. So this second one gives me a chidush. And in these first two cases, the sechach that's here, the non-kosher part, could be made out of good material, but it's just that it's pre-existing was the problem. And so that's why I need this third case. If you told me the first two cases with the house or the portico, even if it's kosher material, it's still no good, because it was pre-existing. So I might think, when can I apply dofen akuma? When the sechach is good sechach material. At least it's more lenient. It's sechach material. I know I didn't put it on for the sake of a sukkah, but at least call it part of the wall. So I could apply dofen akuma, and that's more lenient case. But I might think to say that if it's made out of material like metal, which is totally not good, then I would not apply dofen akuma. So therefore, the third case, where I actually built the whole sukkah and put that non-kosher material on it, and I could still say dofen akuma and less than 4 amot is permitted. That's why I need the third case to teach me that. So that's why I need all three cases. Each one is a successive chidush. Now you might ask, just teach me the third one, because that's the most interesting, and I don't need the first two. The answer to that is the Mishnah often does a lozu afzu structure. This is true, and not only that, also this, and not only that, even this is okay. And that's even though it is, you're right, you could just write the third, but that's the way of Mishnah to add chidushim from one case to another. Okay, good. So now that we got the structure of the Mishnah, we're going to go into the content. And I'm going to skip to the end. The halacha l'maaseh, so we know where we're getting to, is that if you have empty space, that is 3 tefachim. That's the most chamur, because empty space is really noticeable. It's like glaring, like, oh no, there's a hole in my sechach. So less than 3, you're like, that's a small hole, you'll be okay with it. Sechach pasul, however, if it's in the middle of the sukkah, then that's 4 tefachim, just a little bit more. Okay, so I guess the idea also is sechach pasul, it's a little bit less noticeable than empty space. So if it's more than 4 tefachim, you're going to say like, hey, what is that? That's a piece of metal in the sukkah, and then it really breaks the sukkah totally. It doesn't seem continuous. But if it's less than 4, then it seems continuous and your eye can glide right over it. So basically 3 tefachim for empty space and 4 tefachim for there being unkosher roofing material, the same principle that you want it to be unnoticeable. The truth is, for empty space, you apply lavud in addition. Okay, however, this is also still halacha l'maaseh, if it's at the edge of the wall, then it could be up to 4 amot, much bigger. 6 feet. You can have 6 feet of non-kosher sechach, and we'll just consider that all part of the wall. Don't sit under it, but it does still connects the wall to the kosher sechach. Okay, that's halacha l'maaseh, and that's what we're going to see is some of the opinions, but we're going to see a couple of opposing opinions. The first one is going to be Rabbah. So Rabbah is now is an interesting structure we have coming up. Rabbah is going to retell a conversation that he had with the students of Be Rav. Amar Rabbah, Ashkachtinhu Rabbanan de Be Rav. Says, I saw the students in the school of Rav. Truth is that Be Rav can mean just the students of the study house of the rabbi. But you see here, we translate it as Rav, meaning the Amora Rav. All right, I think that phrase can go either way. We're going to see at the end of the daf that they mean actual Rav here, Rav, the first generation Amora, and Rabbah is a 3rd generation Amora. So he's meeting some of the in-between students, or even students from Rav. And this is what they said. Avir posel b'shlosha, sechach pasul posel be'arba'a. So they said exactly what the halacha l'maaseh is, that empty space is posel with 3 tefachim. However, non-kosher roofing is posel with 4 tefachim. Now, 4 tefachim is not mentioned in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah mentions 4 amot. Okay, so our Mishnah only has 2 measurements, 3 tefachim or 4 amot. 3 tefachim, empty space. 4 amot is metal roofing. That's all 3 cases in the Mishnah were on next to a wall. It doesn't actually talk about metal in the middle of the sukkah. So that's where we're not sure. So they say 4 tefachim. Okay, they came up with that, not from the Mishnah. So now the Rabbah is going to say, where'd you get that from? So Rabbah says, I challenge those students of Rav. And he says, what's your source to say that 3 tefachim of empty space is no good? Oh, from our Mishnah, the first clause of our Mishnah. If the sechach is far from the walls, 3 tefachim or more, it's no good. Fine. Sechach pasul nameh la lifsil ela be'arba amot. If so, since your source is from the Mishnah, let's continue reading the Mishnah. If you have sechach pasul, I'm going to call it metal for as an example. Also, it should not be pasul until it's 4 amot. Ditnan bayit shenivchat v'sikech al gabav im yesh ben hasikuch lakotel 4 amot pesula. So a house that the roof fell in and you put sechach instead, if there is between the sechach kasher and the wall 4 amot or less, or 4 amot or more, it's no good. Less than 4 amot would be okay. So you see, I'm just following the Mishnah. The Mishnah gives 2 measurements, one for empty space, 3 tefachim. One for sechach pasul, that is 4 amot. And so according to me, Rabbah says, even if it's in the middle, doesn't have to be on the edge. So he doesn't think it's because of dofen akuma. Even if it's anywhere, it will still be fine. All right, so that's his reading of the Mishnah. Now, ve'amru li, Rabbah is now reporting what the students of Rav told him back. Bar Nehardea. They said bar minan, right? Like stay away from that. Not true. The Rav u'Shmuel amrei tarvaihu mishum dofen akuma nagu ba. Because both Rav and Shmuel, they both say that the reason why 4 amot is okay is because dofen akuma, we consider the wall to be crooked. So that you can only use that if it's adjacent to the wall. If it's in the middle of the sukkah, you can't say that. So your reason doesn't make sense. So we have good authority. Rav and Shmuel, first generation Amoraim. Rav studied with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, so he might actually, have inside information about what the Mishnah means. So ve'amina lehu ana ma ilu ika sechach pasul pachot me'arba'a ve'avir pachot mishelosha mai keshera. This is going to be an ingenious proof, okay, but it's very subtle. So imagine if you had sechach pasul, a little less than 4 tefachim, right? 3.9 tefachim of metal. And you also have space adjacent to it of less than 3 tefachim. So so you have 3.9 and 2.9, 3.9 metal, 2.9 empty space, all adjacent to each other. So you can have a little less than 7 of all bad stuff, yet it's kosher because these are different types of pisulim. So you put them together. Remember, like on Yom Kippur, you can eat, right, less than the kotebet, and drink less than milo lugmav, and that's fine. You still would not be liable, even though you did both of those things. So that's okay. Now, here's the interesting part. Malya b'shipudin mai. Let's say that empty space, I go and I put metal spits in the middle of it. So here is. This is just a picture of what the halacha l'maaseh is, right? Halacha l'maaseh is 3 tefachim is no good in the middle, 4 tefachim is no good in the middle of schach pasul. And so here's his case. Let's say you combine both of those according to you, the Rabbanan of Be'erav. So this is a little schach pasul a little bit less and empty space a little bit less. You say this is kasher, right? Okay, well, everybody would agree that this is kasher. Now here's the paradox. Let's say I put metal sticks on the empty space. Now all of a sudden, what are you going to say? Oh, it's pasul because it's chach pasul. That's more than 4 tefachim, right? And so, but the paradox is that metal is more lenient than empty space. So here, I added metal, which should improve it rather than make empty space. And yet by improving it, now you told me it's not no good. It's kind of like, you're allowed to take two Advil, right? You can't take three, it's not good for your stomach. You can also take two Tylenol, right? Don't take three, it's not good for your stomach. Can you take both at the same time? Yes, you can, because they work on different ways. All right, so now one Advil is better than two Tylenol, right? So therefore, instead of taking two and two, I can just take three Advil. So no, you can't do that, right? So that's a paradox. So that's his challenge to them. Now he would be okay with this because he would say you can have 4 amot in the middle, 6 feet total. So he would say put the metal rods there, and he would not have any problem with it. So that's his challenge to the students of Rav, who came up with this 4 tefachim, because it ends up in a paradox. All right.
The 3 tefachim initially was because lavud, right?
Yeah.
So we're imagining that the empty space is covered by schach.
We're imagining that it's not there.
Right, it's not there. So if we add the schach pasul, now it's pasul.
Right.
So before it wasn't there, now it's pasul.
Good. So is it lavud? Lavud is interesting because lavud means it's as if it's not there, or as if it's connected. But which half is connected? Is it the sechach that's connected, or is this going that way? We don't actually say lavud here. We kind of say it's just not noticeable. But you're right. It is also, maybe lavud is the same thing, that it's not noticeable. Right, but you see, yeah, that you're getting to the heart of the paradox. Okay, they're not going to take this lying down. Says, they said, sorry, Rabba, you're going to have the same problem. Okay, you have a bigger, you're more lenient, and you say 4 amot is permitted in the middle. So we present the same challenge to you. Let's say I have 3.9 amot, right? 4 or 5.5 feet of schach pasul. And then you have empty space, 3 tefachim next to it. What would you say? You say it's okay. Now, malya b'shipudin mai pesula. Lo yahavir posel b'shlosha kisach pasula posel b'arba amot. So same thing. Let's say I fill that in. We have some pictures of this, right? So here would be a case where you have 4 amot. They happen to put this on at the edge, but it really could be anywhere according to Rabbah. And then you have, so this is a little less than 4 amot, and this is a little less than 3 tefachim. This is kasher. And yet, if you would add metal bars, now you have more than 4 amot of schach pasul, then this would be no good. According to Rabbah, according to everybody, would be no good. So same paradox. How could empty space, which is more stringent, now be a liability, be more helpful? Right, empty space is more stringent, and now I made it better by putting metal there. That's less stringent because that's 4 amot, right? And yet, paradoxically, it becomes pasul. So, Rabbah, what's your answer to that? You're going to have the same problem. So, v'amina lehu ana, hai mai, bishla malididi damina arba amot. Says, what are you talking about? What comparison is this? According to me, it's totally fine because I say 4 amot mishum shi'ora. What he means by this is, I am following the shi'ur of the Mishnah. The Mishnah mentioned 2 shi'urim, and when there's a general rule, when 2 things are 2 different shi'urim, they don't combine. We saw this regarding tum'ah, right? If you have tumat met and tumat sheretz, they are different amounts. So if you put them together, they don't add up. Only if you have 2 types of tum'ah that are the same, then if you add from 2 different people, they will join together. So in general, when you have 2 different measurements, they don't join together. So I'm following the Mishnah. The Mishnah gave 2 different measurements. One is 3 tefachim, one is 4 amot. And so as long as you don't have 4 amot, it's okay. And 3 tefachim, it's okay. When you change it to a different type of pesul by adding the metal, and now it becomes sechach pasul. So now you do have a shiur. So that's just basic math. I'm following shiurim, right? Hi, lav shiurahu keban de la shavu shiurahu lehadadeh la mistarfeh. That's the rule. When 2 measurements for different halachot are not the same measurement, they do not combine together. So that's why it makes sense for me not to combine them when it's empty space. And then when you put the metal spits, then becomes the same type of pasul, and then they do combine. So that's just the way it is. Yes. But you guys, right, the students of Rav, you made up a shiur of 4 tefachim. That 4 tefachim, where'd you get it from? That's the amount of area where something that has no good sechach is going to be noticeable. Now, really, even though empty space is 3 tefachim and sechach pasul is 4 tefachim, and they're different, but they're really essentially the same. It's the same in that. That's why I'm avoiding using lavud a little, because it seems like they're conceptual. He's thinking of them conceptually the same. Your eye doesn't notice less than 3 tefachim of space, and it doesn't notice less than 4 tefachim of sechach pasul. But basically, it's the same shiur. So according to you, since you basically derived the 4 tefachim from the 3 tefachim, you just made it slightly better because there is at least something there. So since it's all about haflaga of distance, mali itpalag beschach pasul, mali itpalag beschach pasul ve'avir, then it shouldn't make a difference if I'm using empty space or beschach pasul or beschach pasul and avir, it should all be the same. And therefore, the paradox is okay for me because I have 2 different shiurim. The paradox is not okay for you, right? Really, according to you, since they're the same, so they should join together. Even when they're adjacent, they should join together. And you shouldn't even say that the first one is pasul. So this points out the paradox, the problem of their opinion, and they don't have an answer. Maybe they do have an answer, but Abba doesn't report an answer for them. And that is the end of Rabba's report of his conversation between himself and the students of Berav. Okay, so that's very interesting. Now, Amale Abaye. Now, Rabba's student Abaye is going to come and challenge his teacher. Hold on, not so fast. Even for you, for the master. Nehardea shavu shi'oraihu besukah gedola besukah ketana mi lo shavu shi'oraihu. I can imagine, I can come up with a case where the shi'urim for empty space and for sech pasul is the same. That would be the smallest sukkah. Smallest sukkah is 7 by 7, right? And so if it's 7 by 7, everyone would agree you have to have a majority of sechach kasher. A majority of 7 is going to be 4. So therefore, the most sechach pasul you can have is 3 tefachim, and the most empty space you can have is 3 tefachim. So you see, I showed you a case where they are equivalent, and therefore they should join together, right? Even according to you, because it's a small sukkah, so that ends up being equivalent measurements. So Amar le hatam lav mishum dashavushi orai hu ela mishum deletele shiura desukahu. He says, no, come on, that's not the same. Or the reason why they both are 3 tefachim in that case is not because the shiur is the same, the measurement is the same in their essential law, but rather because you're not going to have enough of a shiur of kosher sechach. You need 4 kosher sechach, and if you have more sechach pasul, you're not going to have enough kosher sechach. So it's really a problem of not enough kosher sechach. It's not a problem of there's too much bad sechach. So the shiur essentially still remains 3 tefachim for empty space, 4 amot for sechach pasul. So that's not a good question. Okay, so we reject that. Now, another question that the Gemara is going to have about Rabbah and about the general statement that we usually say, that if there are 2 halachot that use different shiurim, then they do not join together, right? It applies for, let's say, eating. One is 2 different isurim of eating, like eating and drinking, or for tum'ah, if something is, one thing is tameh for a kezayit, another was a lentil size, right? They don't combine. So is that true? Is that true across the board? V'hatenan, hashelosha al shelosha, habeged shelosha al shelosha, hasak arba al arba'a, haor hamisha al hamisha, mapas shisha al shisha. We have a Mishnah that talks about the the smallest amount that a piece of cloth will become tameh. If a piece of cloth is made out of wool, which is most expensive, if it's 3 by 3, or more become tameh. Less than 3 by 3, it's not usable for anything. So 3 by 3 is the smallest because this is the most expensive and usable. You're not going to throw it out if it's less than 3 by 3. However, sackcloth, which is cheaper, so that if it's less than 4 by 4, no one's going to use it. You're going to throw it out. It's not a utensil, so it's not mekabel tumah. But more than 4 by 4 it is. Or leather is a little bit less expensive. So there it's 5 by 5. And finally, matting is 6 by 6 because that's the cheapest. So each one has a separate shiur. So now these are separate shiurim. So based on your theory that separate shiurim don't combine, if I took half of this one and half of that one and sewed them together, it would still be okay. Yet that's not true. According to Braita, v'tane ala habeged v'hasak v'haor haor v'mapas mistarfin ze im ze. So for example, if you had only 5 by 5 of matting, and then I add another tefach of leather around it, right? And I sew it together, then they do combine. Because since I have something that is cheaper and I'm adding something that's more stringent to it, and it's a total of 6 by 6 with something that's even more stringent than the matting, so then yes, it does combine. So that's a question on the general rule that we've been assuming all along. So we answer, Hatam kedekatane ta'ama, amar Rabbi Shimon, ma ta'am ho'il v'ra'ui l'tameh, moshav keditnan, ham kaseya mikolan tefach ha-tefach tameh. Oh, the reason why it joins there together there is because there is another halacha for which the amount, the shiur is the same. And that is the tumat midras, the tumat of a zav sitting on it. If it's made into a cushion and a zav sits on it, then even 3 by 3 will become tameh for all of them, right? For all the halachot. So they're all the same. The difference between 3, 4, 5, and 6 is only for touching, if something tameh touches it. Right? So you're right. For touching tum'ah, the different shiurim, they shouldn't combine. But because there is another type of tum'ah for which the shiur is the same, so therefore they do combine for that type of tum'ah. Since they combine for the tumat moshav, therefore they combine for tumat maga also. So that is a different. That's the reason for that case. So that's exceptional. But for other cases, it would be okay. Even tefach, I said 3. I meant tefach. Even 1 tefach. By one tefach will become tameh. Yeah, mikolan tefach al tefach if a zav would sit on it. Okay. Now we wonder tefach al tefach lemay chazeh. Wait, what can you use? 1 tefach wide? That's a very small item. What can you possibly use that for? You can use it for a patch on a donkey's saddle. So you're right. You can't make a whole a pillow out of it, but you can make a patch out of it. So and sit on it. So it's still useful. Okay, good. So now that we dealt with that tangent regarding different shiurim joining together, now this is a very, very interesting phrase. Besura amre leha shema'ata b'hayli shana. Everything that we just said before was from the yeshiva of Sura. Sura, that's the one that Rav established. And so that was the sugya from there. But in Nehardea matnu, but in Nehardea, a different city, they taught it in a different way. So this is actually very interesting that there were different yeshivot and they had different curricula. They remembered the traditions in different ways. And throughout the Gemara, usually it doesn't tell us which school it's from. You can try to figure it out based on the names and see what schools that they're in. Sometimes you can see a sugya is made up of 2 parts or 3 parts and break down each one's from different school and see how it comes together. But usually it's not explicit. So here, this is fantastic that it actually says that was all from Sura. The following is from Nehardea. And then it makes you try to figure out what the whole, the Talmud Bavli in general, is it all basically from one school or from another school? Seems to be more Surah, but okay. Anyway, so Nehardea, they teach it differently as follows. And so this is going to be a little confusing because Rav's opinion, we just saw the students of Rav who say what our halacha is, right? That this 4 tefachim is posel in the middle of a sukkah. Now Shmuel is going to say that, and Rav is going to say the opposite. Rav in Nehardea, according to Nehardea, is going to say what Rabbah said in Surah. Okay, so Rav says 2 different things now. All right, so here's what they say. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Sechach Pasul Be'ensa Posel Ba'arba'a Min Asad Posel Ba'arba'a Amot. V'Rav amar ben min asad ben ba'emsa barba amot. So Shemuel says if it's schach pasul and in the middle arba'ah is zachar, so that refers to tefachim. That's arba'at tefachim. If it's on the side, then arba, that's nekeba for ama. Then arba amot. So that's the halacha. That's what the students of Rav said in Sura. Over here, it's Shemuel saying this. But according to this version, Rav says whether on the side next to the wall or in the middle of the sukkah, it's 4 amot. So this is the much more lenient opinion that you could have up to 4 amot of schach pasul in the middle of the sukkah. This is the same as what Rabbah said earlier. Okay, good. Now a challenge from the Mishnah. Tenan. Natan aleha neser shehu rachav arba'a tefachim keshera. There's a previous Mishnah that we had in the Perek, and it says if you place a plank that is 4 tefachim wide, it's kosher. Okay, so that's interesting. 4 tefachim wide, that passes the barrier of Shemuel. Bishlama lerav damar ben ba'emsa ben miminasad arba'amot. According to Rav, who says that whether it's in the middle or on the side, you have up to 4 amot. So this is only 4 tefachim. It's much smaller. So for sure it's okay. Mishamachi keshera. Ela lishmoel. De'amar ba'emsa barba'a amai keshera. According to Shemuel, if it's in the middle of the sukkah, then 4 tefachim is no good. And this plank is 4 tefachim. So it should be no good. Why does the Mishnah say it's okay? So he can answer, minasad. Oh, we're talking about a case where it happens to be adjacent to the wall. It's a bit difficult because the Mishnah didn't say that, but okay, it could be. That's what it's talking about. We quoted this earlier, but you see that it's this is the. It seems it makes more sense now that we have this background. Okay, now another challenge. That was a challenge to Shemuel. Now a challenge to Rav. Tashema, shene sadinin, mistarfin, shene nesarim, and mistarfin. Rabbi Meir omer, nesarim kestinin. Okay, so we have the following, we also saw this tradition, right? If you have 2 pieces of cloth, and each one was 2 tefachim and 2 tefachim. So they join up together to make 4 tefachim. If a cloth is not kosher sechach, and so you don't say, oh, I'll treat this separately and this treat this separately, then they're both less than. No, if they put them next to each other, then it's as if it's one big cloth and it makes the whole thing pasul, and everybody agrees with that. The question is, what about the equivalent case with wooden beams? If I have 2 wooden beams, now it doesn't say how big they are, right? So that's what we're going to discuss. But let's say you have 2 wooden beams, each one by itself is okay, but then together, if they were one plank, it would not be okay. And so that's the case, and that is the machloket. So 2 nesarim and mistafin. Tanakama says they do not join together; that you can consider each plank separately. Rabbi Meir says it's the same as sheets, that you consider them together. You add them up. Okay. So now it doesn't say how much it is. So let's try to figure it out. Bishlama lehadishana damar Rav ben ba'emsa. This is another proof for Rav and a question on Shemuel, like the previous. It's okay for Rav. Ben ba'emsa ben minasad arba amot. My mistarfin arba amot. According to Rav, he says that 4 amot is the maximum, is the minimum, is the maximum of schach pasul you can have. So what would be mistarfin? That would mean, let's say you have a plank that's 2 amot. That's okay because only 2 amot, right? Because it could be up to 4. And you have another plank that's 2 amot. Now, if it was separate, that would be okay. But let's say you put them next to each other. So now you have 4 amot. So they're mistarfin, right? And it's no good. Each one by itself would be okay. But putting them together, you consider it like all one piece of 4 amot, and it's pasul. So you see, that makes sense. He can readily explain the Tanakama's opinion. Ela lahachli shana damar Rav ba'emsa be'arba'a hechi dameh idit behu arba'a lama lehu isterufe idelet behu arba'a kanya be'almaninhu. According to the other opinion of Rav, meaning the previous version from Sura, where Rav said the basic halacha. Or according to Shemuel, Ridley could have asked this on Shemuel also, but it's asking between the two versions, right? It's challenging the Sura version. This is why I couldn't say that the students of Be'er Rav just means the Bet Midrash, because here they're talking about Rav himself. So anyway, according to that other version, in which Rav said in the middle, arba'ah, only 4 tefachim is posel in the middle. So what case could it be? If the plank, each plank has 4 amot, right? The 4 tefachim. If each plank has 4 tefachim is already no good. Even one plank is no good. What do you mean joining together? Each plank by itself, even if they don't join together. And if it's less than 4 tefachim, let's say it's 2 tefachim, then what? 2 tefachim, 2 tefachim, 2 tefachim. That's great. 2 tefachim is a regular piece of schach, right? I could put all of them like that, right? That's what I always use. What else are you going to use? And so, what do you mean? Why should it join together to be pasul, right? This is just like putting a lot of bamboo sticks. That's totally fine. So, what kind of case is it talking about? Umay mistarfin arba'amot min asad. Oh, you can answer. You know what this tradition is talking about? That each plank is 4 tefachim, in fact. And it's not in the middle, because the middle wouldn't be good, but rather it's on the side. And so if you have one plank of 4 tefachim on the side, that's okay. If you have another one, still okay, because you can do up to 4 amot. But once you have up to 4 amot or more, now they join together to make, to be like one. And then, so you can apply dofen akuma as long as this whole thing is less than 4 amot. Once it's 4 amot, it's no good. Even though they're all separate pieces, they do join together. So that's what the joining together is talking about for the law of dofen akuma. Okay, so he can explain the Mishnah that way. Okay, next we're going to get into a different thing altogether, so we'll stop here. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.